Everyone, and welcome to our second meeting of the House Standing State Government Committee. I want to welcome everyone that is with us today. I would please ask at this time that we please stand and direct our attention to the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for any stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Just a couple of quick housekeeping rules before we call the roll, and then I will allow any member that has guests to introduce them today. Please silence your cell phones. If you wish to speak or when you record your vote, please make sure that your microphone is on and speak into that loudly, please. If there's anyone here that has signed up to speak for or against, we do need your name, and I think we do have a name of this for those individuals. But again, at this time, we will have the Secretary call the roll, and then we will have introduction of guests. Madam Secretary, please call the roll at this time.
Representative Bojanowski.
Here.
Representative Bowling. Here. Representative Bratcher.
Here.
Representative Chester Burton. Representative Graham. Here. Representative Heath. Representative Heverin. Here. Representative Herron. Here. Representative Hodgson. Representative Huff.
Here.
Representative Johnson.
Here.
Representative Maddox.
Here.
Representative Rawlings.
Here.
Representative Tate.
Here.
Representative Tipton.
Here.
Representative Williams.
Here.
Representative Witten.
Here.
Representative Imes.
Here.
Representative Hale.
Here. Do we have a quorum, ma'am? We do have a quorum today, and we are constituted to do business. Again, thank you for being here with us. Welcome to our second meeting of the year. We have two items on the agenda today. I'm sorry, pardon me, I'd missed that. We do have those that want to introduce guests. Representative Bojanowski, I apologize.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to welcome my intern, Emmy Slayton. Stand up, Emmy. This is her very first committee meeting. Welcome, Emmy.
Any other member with recognition? Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also have an introduction. I have an intern with me today, Jacob Woods from Shelby County. Stand up, Jacob. He's a junior at Eastern Kentucky University, majoring in political science, and this is his first day here with us in the General Assembly. Thank you for being here, Jacob.
Representative Chester Burton, you have an introduction.
Yes,
Go ahead.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. My intern is here today as well, Sarah Baker, if you please stand. She attends the University of Louisville, and I'm happy that she decided to intern in our office. Thank you.
Representative Williams.
Keep the streak going. I have an intern with me as well, Alexandria Groves. Will you stand up? She's a freshman / junior at the University of Louisville, and I'm glad to have her here today. Thank you.
Representative Heverin.
Chairman Hale, I can't leave my intern out.
Please proceed, ma'am.
Please, committee, welcome Grant Avis, my intern for the session. Very excited to have Grant. He lives in the 18th District, and he is a McConnell Scholar at U of L. So please make Grant feel welcome.
Any other members? Representative Bowling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to introduce my good friend, and you may know her as well, but Miss Sheila Hale is out in the crowd, so I'd like to say hello to her. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Bowling. We can welcome Mrs. Hale to the committee meeting today. Anyone else? We're on a roll. We're doing good. All right, to all of those interns that are with us today, we thank you. We hope you enjoy your session. We hope you have a great time serving the representative who you are interning for. And again, we're glad you're here, and we appreciate your time. Again, today we have two bills on our agenda for consideration. The first item on the agenda today is House Bill 100, which is sponsored by Representative Whitten. Representative Whitten, would you please come to the table, and anyone that would like to join you there at the table? Representative Whitten, would you make sure, please, all of your guests, you please introduce yourself to begin with, and then all the other individuals, please introduce yourself for the record today.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Chairman. My name is Susan Tyler Whitten, and I'm State Representative for District 31.
My name is Bailey Allen. I work at Up for Women and Children in Louisville.
And my name is George Eklund. I work for the Coalition for the Homeless in Louisville, Kentucky.
Representative Sarah Stalker, District 34.
Again, thank you this afternoon for being with us. There is a committee sub, and there has been a motion on the committee sub. Is there a second? There has been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the committee sub, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. The committee sub passes. Representative Whitten, the floor is yours. Please share with us today about House Bill 100.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to present a bill I believe will make a difference in the issue that's so important to our state, reducing the number of Kentuckians experiencing homelessness. As we talked about the committee sub, it solidifies the intent of the bill, and the change is simply adding a comma to the language, which clarifies that this applies to both homeless youth and adults alike. House Bill 100 is the culmination of efforts between myself, Representative Stalker, and multiple stakeholders in Kentucky that want to see real solutions in solving our homeless crisis. I'm happy to be joined here today by Representative Stalker, as well as George Eklund and the Coalition of the Homeless, as well as Bailey Allen with United Partners, to talk to you about this pivotal legislation. At any given time, there are over 4,000 Kentuckians experiencing homelessness on any given night. This bill would simply grant those experiencing homelessness access to their birth certificates at no cost by working with the service provider to verify they are homeless. The service provider will then help them submit paperwork to the Kentucky State Vital Statistics Office. Having a birth certificate allows them the ability to then apply for identification, which opens the door for employment, housing, access to needed medication, and much more. While this measure on its own will not solve the homeless crisis in our state, we firmly believe that this will serve as a stepping stone for a second chance at life for so many experiencing homelessness. Now I would like to turn it over to George or Bailey to talk a little bit about this piece of legislation.
Yeah, so when I first started at the Coalition, like a consistent theme that always came up with service providers and case managers is the inability or the length of time it would take people to get vital documents. And like when we say vital documents, this is documentation that everybody needs to do pretty much anything. Like I can't take my 2-year-old to the doctor without letting them scan my ID. So it is an essential piece of plastic that we're all giving. We all have it in our pockets right now. And so for people that lack that fixed address, like it is incredibly hard to maintain those documents and then keep to get them back. So this really builds on House Bill 21 from last session that you all passed. But I want to turn it over to Bailey to just kind of talk about the good work that they're doing at United Partners for Women and Children and the work that they do to get people birth certificates.
My name is Bailey. I work at Up for Women and Children in Louisville. We are a day shelter for women and children experiencing homelessness. One of Up's most utilized services is assistance with getting vital documents and birth certificates. Every time we are open, we meet women who are looking for the first step towards housing and independence, and one of the first things we ask them every time is if they have all of their vital documents or not. Many of them do not. They have been stolen, lost, or left behind out of necessity, and they have not been able to get another one on their own. For some of them, that $10 they would spend on the birth certificate is the difference between them having gas in the car they're sleeping in that week or not. Their birth certificate is something, like they said, that they must have as they look to obtain a job, any kind of housing, if they want to open a bank account, or even if they want a Kentucky State ID card. Last year alone, UP ordered 860 birth certificates for individuals experiencing homelessness in Louisville. 530 of those were for women born in Kentucky. Access to these documents is a huge barrier for these individuals as they attempt to make strides towards their goals. Making these birth certificates free for individuals experiencing homelessness would be a change that has a true impact on their ability to more quickly and easily regain independence. We are asking that you please vote in support.
Motion on the bill.
Before we go to that motion, Representative Stalker, would you like to add anything? I know that you have been very active in working with Representative Whitten on this. If you have anything to add, please proceed.
I appreciate that. I think what has been said sums up the issue. I just hope that this is a first step that this committee is willing to take to address the cases of so many people experiencing homelessness now and the increases that I think that we're going to see. So thank you so much.
We do have a motion on the bill. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions?
I just want to follow up when we talk about the homeless individuals who move from place to place. Will they, at times, if they lose the information that we're providing, basically the birth certificate, will they be able to acquire a new one if they? How often will they be allowed to do that?
So as the statute's written, there will be no cap on how many times they can acquire that document. There may be something in the regulations around that, but when we're talking about a birth certificate, we were talking about a $10 piece of paper that the state is providing. So the cost to the state is pretty nominal. Like we're talking, at the most, we're providing 3,000 birth certificates across the state. That's $30,000 out of our state budget. It is not going to be felt by any department.
Well, I was looking at it from the standpoint of those individuals being able to keep up with the paper, which they need to have from time to time, and that's why I asked the question. Yeah. So in other words, they will have the opportunity, if they do lose that particular birth certificate, that they can go and get another birth certificate or whatever else they need in terms of their documentation.
That is my understanding.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And if I may
Yes,
talk,
please go ahead.
another part of this is that they do have to work with the service providers to do this. So they're going to be helped at every step of the way to get what they need.
That's all I need to know. Thank you.
I have one question, and then Representative Tate has a question. I'm not really sure actually how to ask this, but if you have these, I think you said 530 in Kentucky. So my question is, how do you find out where these people are?
So these women come to us, and it's one of our main things that we do for them is order them these documents, and they can keep them on file with us and use us as a mailing address. So they'll get mailed to us. We can keep them for safekeeping as they try to get their job. If they need a hard copy of it, they can take the hard copy from us, or they can take a copy of it.
So basically, then they would come back to you to get that document. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Do most of those come? Do they come back currently and get that document?
Yes, we have people, normally once we order someone's birth certificate, they are checking back nearly every day for weeks looking for this document.
Okay, thank you. Representative Tate, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Representative Whitten and Stalker. I appreciate you bringing this before us. And I understand that this is just an expansion upon the bill that we passed last year. But one of the questions that people are asking me is there an opportunity here for people that are in our state illegally? Is there an opportunity for them to get these birth certificates?
So, Representative, the answer is no. There would be no opportunity. So if I ever became homeless in Kentucky, I could not get a birth certificate from the state of Kentucky because I was born in the state of Iowa. Mm-hmm. So the safeguard is there. Like if you do not have a record of live birth in the state of Kentucky, you're not able to get that document. So it is through the state that the people are getting this document, and then the verification is always done through the service provider that is doing that.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any other questions or discussion on this specific bill? Seeing no further questions, House Bill 100 as amended by the committee substitute has a motion and a second. Would the secretary at this time please call the roll?
Representative Bojanowski,
Yes.
Representative Bowling, Representative Bratcher,
Yes.
Representative Chester Burton,
Yes.
Representative Graham,
Yes.
Representative Heath, Representative Heverin, Representative Herron,
Yes.
Representative Hodgson, Representative Huff,
Yes.
Representative Imes,
Yes.
Representative Johnson,
Yes.
Representative Maddox,
Yes.
Representative Rawlings,
Yes.
Representative Tate,
Yes.
Representative Tipton,
Yes.
Representative Williams,
Yes.
Representative Witten,
Yes.
Representative Hale.
Yes. The motion passes with 17 favorable votes and 0 against. It should pass the same on the House floor, and we'll now move to the House floor. Thank you, Representative Whitten, Representative Stalker, for your hard work on this. Thank you to your guests that have came today. We appreciate that very much. Thank you. The next item on our agenda today is House Bill 18, which is sponsored by Representative Ryan Dotson. Representative Dotson, would you please come to the table? And anyone that wants to come and sit with you at the table at this time, have them please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of this committee. I'm Representative Ryan Dotson. I represent the 73rd District, which is all of Clark County and part of Fayette County. And I have a gentleman here that I'll let him introduce himself as well.
Please introduce yourself, sir.
Hello, everyone. This is Shannon Denniston from Mount Sterling, Kentucky. My wife, Elizabeth, and I have resided there our entire life. Well, I have. She's from Shelbyville. But we provide housing to a lot of different people. We've been doing it more than 20 years. And it's just the laws and different things are starting to kind of change or starting to go in a direction that's creating more of a problem instead of a solution. So we're here today to hopefully present a few ideas that may help solve some of the problems that we're facing today.
Thank you, Mr. Denniston. Representative Dotson, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. Today I bring before this committee a piece of legislation that stops the blatant government overreach that is currently taking place in Jefferson County and now being considered in Fayette. And what this overreach does, it forces individual property owners to take Section 8 vouchers and other government assistance, which disallows property owners the ability to vet their prospective tenants, such as taking an application that would ask for maybe prior landlords so they could check and see what type of condition they left their prior property in, sources of income, credit checks, or whatever else the landlord may deem necessary to determine if someone qualifies for that property. Property ownership is a basic tenet of capitalism, and I've always been a very strong proponent of local control. My voting record reflects that. I believe that we need to keep things as local and in control as much as possible. But at the same time, there has to be a line drawn in the sand when citizens, and especially my constituents in Fayette County, are being told by the government that this is what's going to take place. And so we have to understand that housing is an issue. There is a shortage of it, but how do we address it? Forcing this upon our individual property owners is not the way to go. For me, as being a landlord in the past, there was a section of my portfolio that I would use for Section 8 housing because the investment that I had in it warranted that investment. Then there was a portion of my portfolio that I would not because my investment was so much greater. And to be told as a property owner that I have to do this is truly not the American way. And so we stand here today to bring before this committee an opportunity to stop it now before it trickles into other communities across the state. Many landlords have and will continue to accept Section 8 housing. No problem there, but never to be forced to do so. And the thing is that we're starting to see problems arise from these mandates locally. You take someone who only has 2 or 3 properties, rather than to fight this with the local city, they're selling them. They're selling their properties, which takes them out of the rental market. So we're starting to see that trickle effect. Now you'll see, and I've talked with some landlords, I've met with some landlord associations, and many of them are just pulling up stakes out of Louisville, pulling up stakes out of Fayette County, because they don't want to deal with this. It's a blatant government overreach. So today, House Bill 18 addresses that, and it puts a stop to disallowing the landlords to have the opportunity to vet appropriately for their properties. There is a Section 2, which is a part of this bill as well, and some of you may have not heard it, but it is taking place, is that property owners are being liable or being made to be financially responsible for if a tenant in an EMS situation, a first responder situation, rather than billing the tenant, they bill the landlord. And that in itself is really another overreach. And we needed to address these things now and start talking about real ways to fix our housing problems. This time, I'd like to allow my guest to speak for a few moments.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Representative Dawson.
Make sure your light's green.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Great.
You may proceed.
I just want to echo what Mr. Dodson said about it being a form of government overreach, and it certainly is. Property rights, I believe hopefully everybody in this room will agree that we need to respect property rights. And government has a history. They tried to do government housing in the past, and it failed. There's some reasons why specifically it failed and why government now is not as excited about providing the housing itself. In Lexington, there's a need for more affordable housing. Where did it go? Not just Lexington, but other towns, small and large, across the bluegrass are faced with the same exact issue. There's just not enough housing to go around. So how do we get to this point in time? Mobile home parks, they've been getting squeezed out, and new ones can't be built because cities don't want them. Even if they're put on permanent foundations and look identical to the homes on either side of them, they're being prohibited in most cities. Tiny homes are very popular today. A lot of jurisdictions are restricting the square footage of a dwelling unit. Parking is a huge issue. A lot of cities are ultra restrictive on the number of parking stalls you must have per dwelling unit. We build multifamily housing, so these are all issues that we've been faced with. I have a very well-rounded approach on this topic. For instance, in Lexington, there was a couple housing developments called Bluegrass, Aspendale, and Charlotte Court. They were both raised because the city of Lexington didn't want those housing projects. I believe new housing was put in their place, but I'm not sure that it was the same number of units. It's possible that maybe the number of units were reduced. New housing has been extremely limited because of the urban service area and hasn't grown enough to support the population. The few people who own buildable land inside the urban service area can just wait and sell and watch the prices climb. What's the common thread here? It's Lexington wants a beautiful city. I'm sure other cities substitute your city for Lexington, but Lexington wants a beautiful city surrounded by horse farms more than it wants affordable housing. And then city government wants to dump the problem on us. If they would just take the handcuffs off, we would gladly solve this problem for everyone. Lexington passed a law allowing accessory dwelling units. This is another great example, but they made it so restrictive that hardly any of them are being built today. Again, beauty seems to trump affordable housing, and that's the issue. We want big, magnificent, few and quantity structures, and we want them to be beautiful instead of having plentiful structures and housing enough to go around. My wife and I, we've been wanting to build 84 new units of housing in our small town where we live. It's a town I grew up in. I'm fourth generation of my family to live there. I'm very proud of Mount Sterling, Kentucky. And we've been fighting tooth and nail to bring additional housing for many years now to our city. And it seems every time we do, we're faced with roadblocks. And it's not just our city. I don't want to single out my city. I see this in other cities as well because I speak with other developers on a regular basis. And just want to note, it took us 5 years to get 60 of those units approved. 5 years to get 60 units of housing approved. And we attended more than 30 planning and zoning meetings. This was time away from family, from sporting events that our children participated in, and other things, as you can imagine. The question I have is it going to take us another 5 years to get those other 24 additional units approved? You know, it's a time-consuming ordeal. The amount of regulations are mind-boggling. It's no wonder hardly anyone is developing housing today where it's desperately needed. City governments make it near impossible. Unless you have hundreds of thousands of dollars and years of time, you don't even stand a chance today. There's no telling how many hundreds of thousands of dollars of our own money that the city has cost us over the years with delays in our housing developments and unnecessary items like additional parking stalls and new drainage requirements that no one else in town has had to do in the past. It's almost like we're singled out in some cases, but it's not just in our city, it's across our state.
Mr. Denniston,
yes.
I need you to wrap up if you could, please,
Yes, sir.
We have several people that's going to speak after you. So if you could just wrap up in about a minute, please.
Yes, sir. So I guess I could summarize all this and just say no one should be forced to do business with the government. No one should be forced to do business with the government. Property rights should be respected. If you purchase a piece of property with your hard-earned money, I believe you should be able to utilize it to the best of your ability, so long as it does not hurt anyone else. That's the best way I can summarize it. Government is trying to fix a problem without educating the people that it affects. That's another big issue. We have people who use government services their entire lifetime, and it shouldn't be that way. These programs should be temporary, and they should be a safety net, not a way of life. So it's a big issue that we're trying to solve here with, I think, one or two bills, but it's a larger picture. The biggest stakeholders, they're not being brought to the table. Not once have housing providers been asked for advice, and I find it very interesting. Also, the program itself, I just want to wrap up in closing. The programs should be improved so that they are voluntary instead of forced. For instance, the EBT card program is voluntary. Grocers don't have to accept that program if they don't want to, but they do because it's a voluntary program and there's parameters in place and different things. But the problem that you have with housing when you try to apply, say, Section 8 to it is you have a housing voucher recipient that has a non-garnishable wage. And when there are damages that arise, where does that money come from? You can't take the person to court because it's impossible to collect. We all know that. And what my proposal is that we require the housing voucher issuers to stand responsible for the damages in the form of a bond or an insurance type program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. If you gentlemen would please mind to step away from the table, and we will not take questions at this point. We have 4 individuals that have signed up to speak against this measure. The first one I'm going to call on is Miss Emma Curtis. Miss Curtis, please come forward, please. Please make sure you push the button, make sure your green light is on, and please identify yourself for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of this committee. My name's Emma Curtis. I'm 27 years old, and I am a resident of South Lexington. I'm also a renter. The conversation that we've been having around source of income discrimination isn't new. It's one that we've been having for many years. That's why during the 2023 session, God rest his soul, the late Representative Lamine Swan introduced House Bill 437, which was a statewide ban on source of income discrimination that was co-sponsored by Representative Chad All, who is also the representative for my area in South Lexington, where we are constantly having this discussion. Now, this body declined to have a conversation, so we moved it to the local level, which, in my opinion, is really where it should be happening in the first place. I live in Lexington, but my mom's side of the family lives in Mercer County, and I spend a fair amount of time over there visiting them. And when I'm walking around with my cousins in Bergen, I think that it would be, naive to argue that Bergen and Lexington have the same needs when it comes to enforcing policies, enacting policies that would increase the stock of affordable housing and get folks up off the streets. I recently attended an exhibit at the Lexington Public Library, and quite frankly, I'm not certain that Representative Dodson or his colleagues did, because that exhibit went into extensive detail about the history of segregation and redlining in Lexington. It was called Undesign the Red Line. And if they were to see the maps of redlined Lexington from decades ago and the current map of available Section 8 housing, they would know that is functionally the same map. I live in South Lexington, which hardly has any Section 8 housing available in the first place. It's also a historically white area of Lexington. And while we don't have a plethora of Section 8 housing units available, we do have, let me tell you, a ton of empty rental units. Source of income discrimination is not only keeping vulnerable Lexingtonians unhoused and threatening their lives, it is practicing modern day segregation. Now, that might not be true in other places, but in Lexington, 70% of those who have Section 8 vouchers are Black Lexingtonians. There is no way around this. And what we're trying to do at the local level is not force landlords to participate in Section 8 or anything else, but to explicitly state that an otherwise qualified tenant cannot be denied solely on the basis of Section 8 being used to help them pay their rent. So if a candidate for a particular unit is using Section 8 and has other factors that would disqualify them, they're not obligated to rent the unit to that person. Now, some have argued in this body, as recently as yesterday, in fact, that these policies are unconstitutional. That's a lie. Source of income bans have been upheld by the Supreme Courts of California, Connecticut, and New York, the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York, and several other state courts of appeals. The only reason that one would oppose this bill is quite simple. They don't want predatory landlords and housing providers to be forced to make uninhabitable properties safe and habitable for vulnerable populations. House Bill 18 would prevent local governments from using every tool at our disposal to fight homelessness, underhousing, poverty, and continued segregation, even those that have been repeatedly upheld by the United States, upheld as constitutional under the United States Constitution. Now, I know none of y'all came here to hurt people. And I know that that's not the intent of Representative Dodson or his colleagues. But the reality of this situation is that if this bill, House Bill 18, as written, is adopted, it's going to hurt people. It's going to hurt people in my city. It's going to hurt people in my neighborhood. And all of y'all, I know, have walked outside in the past week. And if you were able to see what I see in Lexington of folks grabbing anything they can to try to provide themselves shelter, where our shelters are overflowing and we have people out on the streets. I mean, again, y'all just voted unilaterally, unanimously to pass a bill to help address this. We have other bills coming forward, not in this committee specifically, but Representative Dillon's bill, which addresses many zoning change issues, which would also help our housing crisis.
Ms. Curtis, I hate to interrupt you, but your time is up. I appreciate your testimony very much. Thank you. We certainly appreciate you coming today. Again, I'm trying to be very cognizant of everyone's time, give everyone the same amount of time. The next individual is Mr. Dave. I'm going to pronounce this incorrect, I think. Dave Savigny. You got it. Pardon me for messing that name up, Mr.
No worries. You're not the
Please
only.
Come to the table, please.
Thank you. And
please introduce yourself, sir, for the record. And ma'am, are you going to speak as well?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, sir. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Dave Savigny, and I'm a council person in Lexington, Kentucky.
Ma'am, would you please introduce yourself?
Councilmember Shayla Lynch from Lexington, Kentucky. I represent the 2nd District.
Thank you both for being here. I know you're time is very valuable, and we appreciate your service to the city of Lexington. You may proceed, sir, and when I get to the time, I may have to interrupt you, but go right ahead.
Yeah, I should be okay.
I'll be very cognizant of your time. Go ahead.
Thank you. I totally appreciate you all being here today to talk about this important subject. So my name is Dave, and I'm the Lexington councilperson for District 10 and a co-sponsor of an ordinance we're moving through our legislative process to clarify a form of indirect discrimination as per KRS 344, which it appears this legislation that you're about to do something with is attempting to stop. I've been both a landlord and a tenant in Lexington over the last 39 years, and I've had personal experience in that time with vouchers. At one time, I had an interest in a few houses in Lexington, and both times I've had Section 8 tenants and standard tenants in them. My Section 8 tenants in Lexington were always people of color. A few thoughts on Section 8 because I don't think everyone understands it. A landlord sets their own rental price and terms. If a property that I can get $1,700 a month for, that's what I offer it at. If the max I can get from a voucher holder is $1,500, I can choose to take that if I want to, or I can keep searching and sign a lease with somebody else. I'm absolutely not forced to take a voucher, and in my case, both houses rented for the same price, one to a voucher holder and one to a non-voucher holder. So in many cases, the vouchers are actually competitive. The ordinance that we have drafted simply calls out a form of indirect discrimination by not allowing a landlord to simply say, I do not accept vouchers, as their single method of removing a possible tenant from their applicant pool. It is simply that. It is nothing more. Nothing forces a landlord to enter into the partnership with the government if they don't care to. Property owners do have rights to do what they want to generally with their property, but when they choose to enter into agreements to have someone rent their property, they are subject to a very strict set of rules in how they go about that, which are enforceable at a local, state, and federal level. In Lexington, where voucher holders are 70% people of color, when a landlord says, I don't take vouchers, they are indirectly discriminating against a person of color, which is prohibited under KRS 344. Your proposed bill would be a direct contradiction to KRS Statute 344 on civil rights in Kentucky. In KRS Statute 344, the definition of discrimination from the bill says, discrimination means any direct or indirect act of or practice of exclusion, distinction, restriction, segregation, limitation, refusal, denial, or any other act or practice of differentiation or preference in the treatment of a person or persons, or the aiding, abetting, inciting, coercing, and compelling thereof, made unlawful under this chapter. Furthermore, in KRS 344, you'll find that it prohibits discrimination as defined from both advertising of rentals and the lease of rental property. In Lexington, and for jurisdictions like us, with our draft ordinance, we are simply trying to clarify that in our city and in our circumstance, which is much different than other jurisdictions in Kentucky, the I don't accept vouchers method of excluding a tenant is an indirect form of discrimination that we would like to make sure doesn't happen, and we want to enforce that law. Your bill, and I might add there's a Senate Bill 25 and 76 that are similar, seems to allow an indirect form of discrimination in some localities as prohibited by KRS 344. Once again, localities are in a much better position to manage the nuances of our own communities as we painstakingly take the time to craft a policy. We've spent 18 months on this, and it's laser focused on our own community challenges.
Mr. Savigny, with respect to everyone's time, please.
I got one paragraph left. I'm good.
You may proceed.
Thank you.
Please be
I appreciate the time to share my thoughts with you, Mr. Chair. Since the impetus of this type of legislation is a draft ordinance that Councilmember Lynch and I have sponsored in Lexington. We would be happy to answer any questions of this committee. And I think my co-sponsor has a few words to say. Thank you.
Ms. Lynch, you may proceed. Go right ahead, please.
Thank you so much, Chair. I just want to address a few issues that were brought forth by the sponsor of this bill. And these are just similar statements that I made yesterday when I spoke to your colleagues about SB 25. In our ordinance in Lexington, and to give some context, I fought housing discrimination in the state of Kentucky for over 15 years. So I'm keenly aware of what's going on in the housing industry in our state. So I come from a place of knowledge and understanding. We are not forcing landlords to have to participate in any federal housing program. We're not forcing them. It is still their option, should they choose to rent to someone that has some form of housing subsidy, that they will have to participate in whatever program that is tied to. But we're not forcing them. The landlord can still set their own rents, set their own rental policies. As long as they are not discriminatory, they are free to do business as they're doing today. There's no changing there that we're forcing upon them. They still have the right to rent to who they want to, and to set their criteria as they want to, just as they are today, as long as it's not discriminatory and a violation of the law. Second, I'm not keenly aware of what's going on in Mount Sterling, as we've previously heard, but I am keenly aware, and so is Councilmember Savigny, of what's going on in Lexington. We talk to our neighbors every day. As I'm sure if you all were local elected officials, you know how engaged you are with your neighbors because you're living right next door to them, the neighbors that you represent. We're going to the homeowners association meetings, the neighborhood association meetings. We're going to the school board meetings. So we are keenly engaged on a daily basis with our neighbors, and they are saying to us that we cannot afford to live in Lexington. Businesses are choosing not to come and have their businesses be in Lexington because their employees don't have a place to live, and that's a problem. So with this ordinance, we're trying to remove barriers and open doors literally for folks in Lexington to be able to have a place to live. And if this ordinance or SB 25 should become law, is what's going to happen is displacement. Our unhoused population is just only going to increase because there will be less housing opportunities for folks that have housing subsidies, and that's going to bleed over county to county, city to city. And we don't want to increase our unhoused population. We want to get everyone housed that wants to be housed. Lastly, I want you to think about that. The Section 8 program has been the dog whistle for these bills. And federal funding comes in many forms when it comes to housing. VASH, which provides funding for veterans, that's federal housing funding, and that those veterans would lose those housing vouchers. HOPWA, which is another form of federal housing funding, provides housing funding for individuals that are experiencing AIDS. They would lose that funding. And then housing stabilization dollars, which cities depend on to help those that are unhoused, to help those that are in precarious housing situations find stable housing. We would lose those. Our cities would lose that funding too from HUD. So it's not just Section 8. It's going to affect lots of folks, not just the low-income folks. It's going to affect lots of folks in our communities that depend on that federal housing funding to be able to survive and pay rent every day. So I encourage you to put on your bigger lens and a bigger focus to really see what this ordinance is doing, and that it's not going to be good for our state. I want to live in a commonwealth that is supportive of everybody, no matter the race, background, creed, or income level. This bill is going to be a common hurt for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lynch. Thank you both for your time. Just to make a correction on one thing that you said, we are not here today to hear Senate Bill 25. We're here to hear House Bill 18. So that's our purpose, is House Bill 18 today.
Right.
Thank you both very much. The next individual that has signed up to speak is Emma Anderson. Miss Anderson here. Miss Anderson, is the green light there on your microphone?
Sure is.
Please introduce yourself for the record, and you may proceed.
Thank you. My name is Emma Anderson, and I'm the Lexington organizer with Kentucky Tenants. Kentucky Tenants is a tenant-led organization working for a Kentucky where everyone has safe, high-quality, affordable housing. We have a chapter in Lexington and a chapter in Moorhead, representing hundreds of tenants between the two. I come to you today heavy-hearted. I had to Zoom here this morning from Lexington because I was with a 20-year-old tenant who has just been evicted. She and her 2 beautiful boys, aged 2 and 6 months, have to be out tonight at midnight. She works full-time at Burger King and still struggles to pay her rent. She will be forced to live in her car because the only family shelter in Lexington is completely full and has been for months. 900 homeless children in Lexington alone at last count. It's a record. There are people living at the Salvation Army right now who have vouchers and cannot use them. Source of income discrimination has the greatest effect on single mothers with children. Kentucky tenants and Lexington city government have been working to pass a ban on source of income discrimination for over a year now. Let's see. The legislation does not force landlords to accept Section 8. It merely ensures that people who use third-party payments are not excluded from applying for rentals. City Council has reached out to Lexington residents for an exceptional amount of public input. Councilmember Savigny and Councilmember Lynch and their colleagues have made time to listen to all sides and have had countless individual conversations with interested parties, landlords and tenants. And city officials have presented at numerous organizations with special interests on the issue. They even scheduled a special hearing just about this one policy. More than 70 people showed up to support the ban, and hundreds of people have sent emails. The public has been very clear that they want a ban on the public has been very clear that they want a local ban on source of income discrimination, and the fact that there is legislation on the table that would take away our right to make that decision for ourselves and follow our local democratic processes is really disheartening. Passing Senate Bill 25 would undermine our local control and is directly in violation of the values so many of you sitting before me. When Kentucky tenants began in 2020, we conducted a 6-month listening project across Kentucky. From August 2021 to February 2022, a team of 30 texters and callers completed 4,000 conversations in 21 counties across the state. The results emphasize that housing is unaffordable, that landlords often exploit their tenants, and that we need fundamental changes in the way we talk about, think about, and legislate around housing. In answer to the question, is housing affordable in your community? 67% of respondents said that housing is unaffordable for most people in their community. Instead of spending time trying to take away local control, I have a suggestion that you could help your low-income constituents across the state by fighting for eviction expungement and allocating at least $200 million into affordable housing this year. Kentuckians value the freedom and liberty to make our own decisions. Please don't take that right away from us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. I appreciate that. You were right exactly on the time. Thank you very much. The next individual that has requested to speak, and I'm probably going to mispronounce this, Adriana, is it Bush?
It is. It's Adrienne Bush.
Adrienne Bush.
Yes.
Ms. Bush, please, at this time, please identify yourself to the committee for the record, and then you may proceed.
Okay.
Is your green light on?
The green light is on.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it? Okay, great.
Go right ahead.
Okay,
Thank you for being here.
Sure. My name is Adrienne Bush. I am the Executive Director of the Homeless and Housing Coalition of Kentucky. And I want to thank Chairman Hale for allowing me to testify. We are really glad to see this General Assembly start to have the conversation around housing and homelessness. I have been in this position for 7 years. I've had the opportunity to testify before certain committees, never state government before, but the fact that we are starting to have conversations, this is very important. Is it on the top of everyone's mind? So, with that said, our concern with HB 18 as the way it is currently drafted is that housing voucher discrimination writ large prolongs homelessness. It limits participants' choice in the neighborhoods where they want to live. Part of the reason the Section 8 program was created back during the Nixon administration was to deconcentrate poverty and allow people to choose where they wanted to live, be connected to schools, churches, families, etc. Since the 1980s, I know this concept is new, this concept of source of income discrimination, and the ordinance in Lexington is new to Kentucky, but this concept has actually been around since the 1980s. We've had more than 20 states adopt it. In Kentucky, we just have had Louisville adopt a local ordinance, but I mean, the states that we're talking about are North Dakota, Oklahoma, Utah, Virginia. So I just want to kind of set that context for you all. When housing vouchers go unused, we are effectively turning back federal money that helps stabilize households and communities. When people are spending more than 30% of their income on housing, they are at increased risk for homelessness. In Lexington, 18% of the vouchers that were issued during a period of time in 2023 were returned to the federal government because voucher holders could not find a qualifying apartment with a landlord who would accept the voucher. The Section 8 administrator for 87 counties reports that 40% of the vouchers are maxing out on the federally allowed time of 150 or 210 days because people in rural communities can't find folks to take their vouchers either. The other thing, too, that I want to point out is the way the Lexington proposed ordinance is drafted, the way the ordinance is working in Louisville today, these ordinances do not require participation for all aspects of the Section 8 program. It doesn't require that they accept all applicants, just that they treat them the same as people with employment or other traditional income. It doesn't require that they hold units for an exceptionally long period of time. As everyone up here has noted, we have an affordable housing crisis and we don't have time to wait. This ordinance would not delay that any further. It doesn't require the landlords to lower the rent to the fair market rent. As someone said, if the rent can be charged, if an apartment can get $1,700 a month, so be it. Does not require it does not require the landlord to lower the rent. It doesn't require that the landlord make repairs or alterations to units if their unit does not pass inspection. And it just doesn't really change or restrict any landlord rights to enforce compliance with the written lease agreement once executed. The contract law reigns. So, since there is no statewide income discrimination ban in place, we believe, from our perspective at the Homeless and Housing Coalition of Kentucky, that the state should step out of the way and allow local governments to make that decision, to enact such an ordinances and be accountable to their voters.
Ms. Bush, to be fair with everyone, I have given you the same time as everyone else.
Did I get to 5 minutes already? I'm so sorry.
You were 14 seconds over, so.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I thank you. Again, I apologize. I don't mean to interrupt anyone, but we do have to move on because we do have to vacate this room within about 35 minutes.
I appreciate your time.
So please, thank you very much. The next individual to speak is Justin Person. Is that right? Is it
Justin Parent, close enough.
I'm sorry, sir.
Justin Parent, close enough.
Parent. Okay, go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
No worries.
You may proceed. The clock has started.
Yes.
Identify yourself, please, for the
Hi,
record.
Justin Parent, real estate investor, and also own a couple of businesses. So we're talking about, I think, something that, from what I've heard, we all agree on, which is that we want to solve this homelessness problem. But what I really don't understand is why we're talking about one aspect of it, which is the physical location. Anybody, including many people who have spoken here today, if they're being honest, would voluntarily admit that homelessness has a lot of factors to it. Physical health, mental health, right? Geneticism. There's all kinds of factors that are not being addressed. The people that are on the side of wanting to provide affordable housing like us, but don't want to be forced to be told how to run our businesses, we did this because we want to provide housing. This is not necessarily, it's not a great business. Anybody of you who are in it and have done it, it's not a great business. It is very hard. It takes years of dedication, hard work. And when you have, I've got one that just happened to me. We completely remodeled the place, top to bottom. They completely destroyed the house. We could not get them back. We lost $60,000 and almost put us out of business. And it's still nowhere. We're nowhere even close. So, I'd like to see us as a group, as quote unquote business partners, because that's what we're supposed to be, right? You're taking 50% of every dollar that we make and then coming back and telling us how to run our businesses. And if any other business partner in the world came to me with that proposition, I would promptly fire them. Instead, what we should be doing is working together. Okay, I heard a statement here that 18% of Section 8 vouchers are unused. That is not true. It's 99.8% actually are used in the city of Lexington. So they're not going unused. And if they are going unused, let's put that money to work. Okay? Look at all the tiny home communities that have been developed with success. You know why? Because it's consolidation of services. It's consolidation of services for physical health, mental health, job recuperation, right? Putting a roof over someone's head is not going to solve this problem. There are other solutions out there. And if we work together as business partners, put some of that funding into building affordable housing and removing the barriers that the people like us have dedicated our lives providing housing to the people like them that we want to help, that's a solution. But this forcing us to be to take 50% of every dollar that we make and then coming back and telling us how to run our businesses, it's not sustainable. And what's going to happen is what has happened in other cities where this is taking place. And the real estate developers and the real estate investors will sell their businesses, they will sell their properties, and they will move. And this problem will get worse, not better. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Our last speaker or presenter that has signed up to speak today is Mr. Joe Markham. Mr. Markham, would you please come forward, please? Mr. Markham, welcome to our committee today. Would you please, for the record, identify yourself again, and then you may proceed.
Yes. Thank you for your time. I was not planning on speaking today, so this is just basically going to be me reading what I read to the Lexington City Council in presentation of this.
Could you please identify yourself?
Yes,
again?
I'm Joe Markham. I'm a real estate investor in Central Kentucky. We own 52 single-family homes in Lexington and surrounding counties. We provide housing for hundreds of residents. For 24 years, we've provided rental housing and have dealt with the Section 8 program many times. At one point, we had 13 single-family houses that accepted vouchers, and we currently have 0. This has nothing to do with discrimination and everything to do with the business interactions that we've had with the Housing Authority and HUD. I understand and empathize with the intent behind this ordinance that's being proposed, the source of income ordinance, which is really what you guys are focused on. Everyone here is getting very emotional and has thoughts on what should be going on, but what is being addressed needs to be focused on. So I'm concerned about what will actually emerge if it passes. Intent versus what emerges is a familiar concept to the Marxist or other students of economics in this room. Frederick Engels, what each individual wills is obstructed by everyone else, and what emerges is something that no one willed. Too often, things like this source of income ordinance would be passed without due consideration, and once implemented, they are never again revisited. Their intent and what emerges are never measured against each other. Thomas Sowell, one of the real problems you have people making decisions for which they pay no price when they are wrong, no matter how high a price other people will pay. This ordinance has a definite price. It will make housing more expensive in Kentucky for every renter. It will effectively establish a floor for rental rates, that floor being the Section 8, whatever HUD vouchers determine. This cuts two ways. The way around this is people will price their houses above the fair market rent for HUD. That's going to increase rental prices. This ordinance adds 0 units of housing to the limited stock available. It will not make a single unit available in better area with better resources. The rents in those areas are already higher than what voucher holders can legally pay. Voucher holders represent approximately 5% of the renters in Lexington, 3,600 vouchers for about 70,000 rentals. The presentation shows approximately 4% of houses accept vouchers. I've run multiple searches and found that the percentage is slightly higher. There is no shortage of Section 8 units. The expected percentage is accurately reflected in this admittedly short housing supply in Lexington. This is further proven by the voucher usage rates at 99.8% for the Housing Authority in Lexington. No vouchers are ever lost or returned unused. They just go to the next person because it's a housing choice voucher. So if you have a person that is looking for a house and cannot find something that meets their needs in their desired area or meets their desired criteria, they have 180 or to 210 days to find something. If they don't, that voucher goes to the next person in line. It is never returned to the HUD department. It stays in Lexington. Forcing housing providers to participate, you are creating new government dependence. The voucher holder and now the housing provider are dependent on the government for their way of life. An option in the Section 8 program allows the voucher holder to use the voucher for a home purchase. Does this ordinance force banks to accept this as a lawful payment and a source of income? If not, why not? Especially given the history of redlining, banks should be held to the same standards. Due to the extreme limits on time, I can send emails and reach out to discuss with anyone individually that wants to talk about this. In summary, passing this ordinance is bad for all renters and housing providers in Lexington. It will not accomplish what it intends to, and what emerges will be detrimental to the entire state. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Markham. We appreciate your time, and I want to say again to each and every one of those that came and spoke, thank you. I know you're very passionate about what you're speaking about, what you believe in. Representative Dotson, I'm going to ask you to come back to the table, please. Those on the committee that have a question, please just raise your hand. The staff will get you in the queue. As you get into the queue, we will take that in the order that the questions come. I would ask you to please, if you could, limit your questions to one question and a follow-up, no more than one follow-up, and then if we have time, we will come back around. Again, I appreciate everyone. Representative Dotson, you have a couple minutes. Would you like to respond to anything, or are you?
Well, just hearing some of the testimony from the opposing arguments is that I'm not negating the fact that there is a housing issue, but this definitely isn't the way to address it. What we need to send a strong message to these cities across the state is that let's help and work with landlords. Let's take some of these regulations away. Let's allow, as my guest, Shannon Denniston, spoke, allow these guys help to be a solution to the problem. They're hamstringed. Their hands are tied, and now they're being forced by some of these local governments to do exactly what really is going to cause a greater detriment down the road. So with that, I'd really like to encourage all of you for a yes vote.
We do have some questions. Before we do have the motion and the second, we do have some comment. We do have questions. The first one I'm going to refer to as Representative Herron. You are first today. Go right ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to get some clarity. I'm very concerned about this legislation as it relates to veterans in my district. I have several organizations that provide housing for veterans, and particularly in the ordinance that was passed in Louisville, which for the record was passed bipartisan 24-0. It specifically has language in there for veterans. And so I just want clarity of how this, about how House Bill 18 will or will not impact our veterans, not only in Jefferson County, but across the state.
Again, I'm a veteran myself. I'm very sympathetic to veteran issues. But again, that should be left up to the individual property owner. That's what it boils down to at the end of the day. Some people are comfortable with it. Some people have been so burned out with dealing with Section 8 housing and dealing with, as the gentleman, Mr. Perrin, came up here and said, $60,000 worth of damages. I mean, they're liable. They're left on the hook. Who's going to pay for these damages? So therein lies the issue. They should be the one to decide who and when and, for the amount of the contract that they want to supply. So here we have that decision to make. But again, Representative Herron, I'm sensitive to the fact of veterans, but for me, it goes back to the individual property owner to make that decision.
I just have one follow-up.
You may go
Just
ahead.
for clarity, so are you saying that veterans should not be a protected class as it relates to receiving housing support from local government or entities?
No, I'm not saying that at all. But when it comes down to them finding a property, they have to find a property that accepts that voucher. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Representative Rollins. You may proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our founding documents give us fundamental natural rights to life, liberty, and property. I look through this bill, House Bill 18, I see nothing on discrimination, local housing issues, local ordinances, homelessness. I don't see any of those things addressed. So, Representative Dotson, would you please explain how this just ensures our property rights?
And that's basically all this is. Many of y'all know I am a pastor, and homelessness is an issue. And we birthed out of our church Beacon of Hope, which is in Winchester, which is a homeless shelter. So homelessness is near and dear to my heart. We try to work to try to help these people get back on their feet. We have a director that came out of our church that helped birth this ministry. And so, you know, and when this legislation came out, I was being talked about in various papers all across the state as being uncompassionate, not loving, and really people don't know who you are. And so this is not the way to fix the housing issue. We need to come to the table, bring all stakeholders, all the ones even who oppose me on this issue today, and let's talk about ways of fixing this problem rather than putting our landlords and these business owners at risk and jeopardy.
Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Dodson, appreciate your presentation today and appreciate everybody who came and shared their views on this issue. My question is relating to Section 2, subsection 2, with the part that no local government or special district, et cetera, or provider of emergency response will submit any demand for payment or require an owner of property occupied by an individual other than the owner to pay any emergency response fee. So my question is this section specifically referring to an emergency response fee versus like a local ordinance on a nuisance ordinance or something like it? But this is specifically to the emergency response fee.
Hypothetically, if there was a crime that took place on the property that first responders called to the property, that should not be the landlord's liability. That should be up on the tenant. And it needed to be addressed because that's not the case in some small cities across Kentucky.
One brief clarification, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I know that some fire districts have fees if somebody's not a member of a fire district. Of course, fire department's coming to protect the property of that owner. How would that apply in that situation?
Again, it would go back to the tenant. They're the ones that would have to be liable for that particular instance. So, because at the end of the day, when you lease your property, you're signing your property over to that individual. So they should be on the hook for that expense and not the property owner, especially if it's not their fault. Now, if EMS or if the fire department gets called and there's faulty wiring and the house burns, well, that's on the landlord. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about if it's a tenant-related issue.
Representative Bojanowski, you may proceed, ma'am.
Yes, so this bill bans local control requiring the prevention of discrimination based on source of income. So my understanding of the Louisville ordinance is it does not require a landlord to accept a tenant, just that the tenant must be treated equally regardless of source of income. So I'm almost inferring from some of the conversations that landlords are just assuming that Section 8 tenants are going to be more likely to destroy property or to be more expensive tenants. I mean, can you not see how that would be discrimination based upon their poverty?
We heard all the testimony today, Representative, and a lot of what was said was really untrue when it comes to the fact that these folk who are putting their investment, who's risking their monies, should not be told. And when we go back and we look historically, there is a lot of damage that does come with Section 8 housing. It's just a fact. And that needs to be disclosed to the landowner. And so, you know, I can't speak for all the landowners here. I took Section 8 housing for years. I had no issue with it, with a portion of my portfolio. But then there's other properties I couldn't use for Section 8. And I should be, the investor, have that right to choose.
May I make one brief comment?
You may.
So at the same time that this General Assembly is advocating the criminalization of homelessness, and we just unanimously passed a bill to support individuals who are homeless, we're making it harder for people who are poor, those with disabilities, and potentially our veterans to secure housing. I'm going to vote no.
Seeing no further questions, yes, okay, Representative Graham, this is the last one.
My colleagues have touched on most of the things that I wanted to talk about, but I want to talk about we're here to do and to represent the people all across this Commonwealth, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We take on this charge, but when it's all over and we leave this place in terms of this legislative body, and when we leave this place on the face of the earth, you as a minister, you know this, we have to go before the Father. No. And when we go before the Father, he's either going to tell, well done, my good and faithful servant, or he's going to hold us accountable for what we do to one another. And the fact of the matter, all of these things have been brought up in terms of the federal loss of money, of which Kentucky, I'm sure, is at the very top in terms of getting appropriations for this particular area. But I come from local government before I got here. And we always talk about what the federal government is doing to state government. And yet now here we go, the state government telling the local elected officials who are the closest to the constituents in which we all serve. And we're telling them we're going to take away some of that so that we can make this particular bill and pass it and become law. And we take it away from what local government has that responsibility to do. And as a person of color, whether or not you want to look at it and say it's not about, but it comes down to discrimination. Discrimination not only of people of color, but people who are poor and people who have really very little to live off of. So when I make my vote today and say no, I'm thinking about the responsibilities I have, not only to the people of Franklin County, of which I represent, but for those across the Commonwealth, whether they're from Paducah or Ashland, that people are going to be impacted if we pass this piece of legislation and take away some of those charges which are with the city and county governments to take into fact. So I'm going to be voting no as well. Thank you.
We have a motion. Representative Bowling, would you please make your motion again? Representative Maddox, would you please second that again? The motion has been made by Representative Bowling and second by Representative Maddox. Madam Secretary, please call the roll at this time. Make sure your light is on when you record your vote so the Secretary can hear you well. Please proceed.
Representative Bojanowski,
No.
Representative Bowling,
Yes.
Representative Bratcher,
Yes.
Representative Chester Burton,
No.
Representative Graham,
No.
Representative Heath, Representative Heverin, Representative Herron,
No.
Representative Hodgson,
Yes.
Representative Huff,
Yes.
Representative Imes,
Yes.
Representative Johnson,
Yes.
Representative Maddox,
Yes.
Representative Rawlings,
Yes.
Representative Tate,
Yes.
Representative Tipton,
Mr. Chairman, explain my vote.
Yes, sir.
There's no doubt we have an issue of quality, affordable housing in this country. We have a housing issue in general. There is a significant shortage of housing units across the country. I'm a licensed real estate broker. I also rent property. I see this every day. It is the cost of housing for somebody to purchase a home or to rent a home is extremely high right now. This is an issue we have to resolve. The issue before us today is a debate between local control and private property rights. And today I'm going to vote on the side of private property rights and vote yes, but we have to continue this conversation and work toward improving this situation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Williams,
Yes.
Representative Witten,
Yes.
Representative Hale.
Yes. The motion passes with 13 favorable votes, 4 no votes. This bill will be moved on to the full House for consideration. Thank everyone for their time today. We are now adjourned.
Are you on? That's a little more.